like a half hour. Hello, hello, Noel.
Hello.
He's gonna be with us for like a half hour because he has a 21. So
Yep.
yeah. So we're gonna try to
All of
move
my
it.
hair turned gray today. I had to use Just for Men earlier this morning.
Joe, did you get a copy of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, thanks.
Okay.
Grab my pen, but I don't think I need it.
So why don't we focus right away on the solar ordinance? Because that's the key thing that Noel and I tried to go through again today. After we last had this discussion, the concern, what started this all was the concern about the height of panels on roofs. And that seemed like a very reasonable concern to me because I assumed that everybody was thinking about flush mounted solar panels when we were talking about roof installations and not things that went like this. So Noel, do you want to walk us through what the most recent draft says about that and various other things we've been talking about?
Sure, I will. All right, so I think just to start off, it's important to note that just everybody's understanding is that this change establishes basically two kinds of solar energy systems. One is a ground-mounted one, and one of them is a roof-mounted one. And then in the context of that, there are different sizes. And so depending on the size and the type, they're allowed in different parts of town, in different land use districts. So I think it's important context just as we're kind of working through what changes there are. And if it helps, I also have it up on the screen. Can you guys all see that, or do I need to zoom in? All right, anyway, first change that you'll see, hopefully in yellow and then maybe with a little note off to the side, is on page 2, which in the context of how you think about solar energy systems, there's ground-mounted solar energy systems and small scale, roof-mounted solar energy systems, and each one of them is sort of treated in the context of size. They're each kind of treated the same. And in our table of allowed uses, we are making some distinctions between them. And so what we did, the way that the committee had been talking about them was to treat all roof-mounted solar energy systems kind of, um, as if they didn't need a permit. But I think what we needed to actually do is add a column or a column or row, sorry, for solar energy systems, medium scale roof mounted solar energy systems in the table of allowed uses. And I've added that and also the term ground mounted solar energy systems so that the medium scale ground mounted solar energy systems are the ones that require planning board approval through conditional use. And those are allowed in the residential 1 and 2 districts, all of the shoreland districts, and the rural woodland districts. So for context, medium scale is basically 15,000 square feet to an acre or 2 acres. I think it
2 acres.
is. And so those are the only places in town where those systems would be allowed. Just to make sure that that still makes sense to everybody. And then the second one was I added the medium scale roof mounted solar energy systems as a separate allowed use. And then I made them permit required through the code enforcement officer, much like a small scale ground mounted solar energy system. So they're kind of treated the same. And Gail asked a good question. We were kind of going over this. And what's the difference? Why require that a CEO permit rather than a just regular old permit? And I think the reason I picked CEO is because they're a little bit bigger in size, and there may be a reason to have a few other things checked out by the code enforcement officer just due to scale and complexity. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Happy to change it if that sort of approach doesn't work, but that's the way I was thinking about it when I did it. So want me to keep going?
Yep.
All right, so in order to do that, also like under footnote 14, I added medium scale because footnote 14 is basically the stream protection district. And if you're not you know, an approved structure in the stream protection district, then you really shouldn't have any of those. So I just added the term medium scale to that footnote, which was already there before. All right.
Are you staying in VR3?
VR3.
Oh, you showed just C highlighted.
Oh, yeah. Probably in VR3 should be, do we want to allow them?
That's the only place that is Sastiku.
Yep. So would we want to allow them there?
Yes,
Medium scale?
yes.
Sure, right?
Yeah.
And that's different than a ground mounted, which we don't want to allow in a VR3, I would assume. Okay, moving on. The next change deals with height. So this was when we talked about it, as Gail mentioned, we talked about this with the sustainability committee, and there was a few people that thought, you know, our blanket exemption of any roof mounted solar energy system as it relates to height probably wasn't the best idea, and made this change under BI. So the change would be roof-mounted solar energy system shall be flush-mounted on the roof whenever possible and shall comply with the maximum building height allowed for that district. If a support structure is installed to optimize sun capture angle, then the maximum height must comply with the maximum building height. So this scale was where we had talked about, like, can you flip it up a little more when you're on a flat roof build, when you're on a flat structure? And couldn't quite figure out a way to make it work in the language that I had in one draft, but I think this captures it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep, please.
You state that roof mounted, that roof mounted solar energy system shall be flush mounted on the roof whenever possible and shall conform with the maximum building height allowed for that district. The inland zoning, height restriction of 40 feet.
Yep.
Planning board has the authority to allow the building to go higher with conditional use approval. You give any thought to that? Which would it be addressed with the rural woodlands and the R1 and R2s?
I actually did read that, and I mean, my thoughts are, how does the planning board determine what would be a visual impact? There's no standards in the ordinance to do that, which is why I kind of left out that option. But is that a good safety valve, I guess, for projects that might not be, you know, that might need to go a little bit higher to give the planning board the ability to waive the height or increase the height inland in those areas, Kim? It's more of a question for you guys.
How often do they do that?
I've seen it once, but only because I think people don't know. I'm sure the buildings, and well, it's not permitted in village commercial, but would like to go higher, but there's a lot of rural R1s and R2s that are limited at 40, but they could certainly go higher. Any building with a conditional use permit through the planning board.
So if it's left as it is, you can't, just as a matter of course, like you could a building height. I mean, the building height requirements in the code say 30 feet or 40 feet or whatever it is. Does it, I can't recall, does it also say unless you get a conditional use? It explicitly says that.
Yeah, under the definition for inland zoning.
Okay.
Let me go with my ordinance now.
Oh, well, I got it right here.
Well, actually, I might have it report.
Well, let's set that aside. We got to finish that before we finish this discussion, but let's keep moving.
Well, I mean, I think that's important. I mean, I could make the edit right now, but the edit would be something like, if you decided that you don't want to allow that exemption, then we would have to.
No.
That's what you're getting at, Kim, is you'd rather not allow it.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, you just wanna,
Yeah, it just
wanna
needs
point
to-
it out.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
It would be
So-
consistent to allow.
So it says,
Yeah.
under footnote, which is H1, which is structures outside the shoreline zone shall not exceed 40 feet. In exceptional cases, which meet the standards of this ordinance and will not adversely affect the skyline of the town, conditional use approval may be issued notwithstanding the above height limitations. Then it says placement of fill to circumvent this height requirement is prohibited.
On the one hand, that does give the, it sort of addresses the thing that we had been talking about, which is to allow the planning board to grant some increase to the height without, in those situations where it makes sense. On the other hand, I still don't know what standards you're going to apply. Even in that situation, I don't know what standards you apply.
Right, right, well, that's why we didn't want to get into the viewscape thing, like,
And I understand that, but you got an ordinance that specifically allows you, I mean, you've got a roof and somebody wants to go above 40 feet by standing their solar panels out.
no, I know, but I mean, when this discussion first came up, the whole topic was like, well, we don't want to be in somebody's viewscape with these.
Yeah, but you're also gonna have them flush mounted on the roof, with the exception of flat roofs. Being able to stand them up.
Well, but he's worded it a little differently now, and I do have some concern about that, because our original draft that we've been talking about, or when we started the discussion today, was if you've got an angled roof, you got to keep it parallel to the roof. If you've got that doesn't allow for somebody to put panels on the roof if their angle is shallow. It only allows for tilted panels if you've got a flat roof. That was the original. And you're trying to allow more leeway for roofs that aren't pitched properly to the sun.
Yes.
Yeah. To cover, so if you've got a roof that's very shallow, then you're not going to be able to put panels on it that are effective. But again, the problem is none of us are engineers in this department, and none of us know exactly what will be efficient and effective. So at this point, we can insert language that allows, like if somebody's doing this in rural woodland, something or other, and they've got a lot of acreage, and they've got the full 40 feet already, there's no reason, and they need to tip it, there's no strong reason to not allow that. I mean, if you've got circumstances like that. Or if the building is already high to begin with.
I mean, because, solar is becoming more popular, so.
Yes.
You're gonna probably see a lot more of this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you could put the same footnote in H1, in that section, if you think, planning board can grant conditional use. If you want to see the height limitation in the zoning district, it's gotta be inland, it can't.
I mean, I think that I would do either not add just rely on the height footnote that's already there. If that's like a tool that you want to allow, or if you don't want to allow it, I would do the opposite, which is to say this, height limitation for solar energy systems shall not be modified by the planning board or something like that.
Well, the height, that's relative to height of buildings. This is, solar panels are not a building.
Right,
So
so what you're saying is you don't think that exemption has anything to do, would allow for a higher building, would allow for a higher solar energy panel.
I don't think, because it's specific to building. I think you need to address it.
I guess, yes. How does the committee feel about it? Because we can figure out how to address it.
We can figure out some language for that, and we can insert some language that's similar to the language about the building heights. I mean, if you get a permit to build, or you already have a building that's greater than 40 feet, and you wanna put solar panels on it, you're just not gonna be able to do that unless we have some. The planning board has some flexibility to allow that, no?
Well, they've already allowed the building to be taller.
Well, no, it could be a grandfather building.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want people to be able to go higher, is the question.
And it sounds to me just currently that you're saying this language would allow them to anyway, right? Because it's
As long as
not,
it's noted with a conditional use permit.
Right,
right, because
because-
it's not a building.
Cause yeah, cause HDM is specific to buildings.
right, and this one is a strict limitation to the,
Yeah,
doesn't allow you to go beyond the height of the building.
so I think that is important.
Yes,
Sure.
so let's add something in there that allows to, allow the planning board to make those changes.
So Gail, I just want to get back, I can do that right now while you're talking about this. But the reason I went away from kind of the flat roof thing was because I wasn't sure. When you try to massage the language to do kind of what this one already does, the way that the original other version was written is that in the shoreland zone, if you are on a roof mounted solar energy system located outside the shoreland zone that are installed on a flat roof, are permitted to exceed the zoning district height limits by up to 10 feet. And I don't think that's what was the intention. I think it was, you still need to meet the height limit, but you don't have to be flat. You can be raised up
Right.
to meet a better
Right.
solar
Right.
angle. And so this language actually achieves that objective. And
Okay.
it also allows for panels to be a little bit angled. But if we're trying to meet Dennis's comment about height overall, is that, we're trying to minimize, you can't go higher than, it's not like treated like a chimney or an antenna or anything. You just can't go higher than the height restriction.
Right,
Right.
good. Okay,
I think I could totally be wrong and convinced otherwise, for sure. But I think this one, that kind of meets that standard.
yes, and we'll add in the language allowing exceptions to be granted by the.
Can you just add a footnote
Yeah,
under, like in the table? Make a footnote 15? Well,
If you think that's easier, or I would just put it right here.
Oh.
Something like that. In exceptional cases which meets standards of this ordinance, it will not adversely affect the skyline of the town. Conditional approval may be issued notwithstanding the above limitations. I could do that, or we could put it as part of the footnote.
well, if that seems to be, I like things all in one place if possible. That would be my preference, and then it's all, people don't have to go hunting around for footnotes.
Do we need the placement of fill line in there?
Well, you'll see when we get to, well,
Oh.
we don't need the placement of fill, yes, because it's on a roof.
Right.
It's like, well, a green roof, I suppose, but
Tim, what do you think of that?
yes,
Yes?
yes.
Great.
Speaking of height,
So do you think that pretty much captures that pretty much captures what I think we're hearing about height?
yes,
Got it. So the next one, number 2, or Roman numeral 2, is this one. I think we had some conversations about this and weren't quite sure how to handle it as part of our committee meetings. And then Gail mentioned it again. That there was an exception for these ground mounted solar energy systems to be up to 22 feet, as long as they're set back by 30 feet. And it just seems like a little too much. So in this draft, we just stopped it at 12 feet in height, and then added this is more of a question maybe for Kim, but the way that you measure it is from the average elevation at finished grade and not the height at, the
What's the
downhill side.
elevation?
So it's a slightly different it's a different way to measure height for this specific application.
I mean, what's average elevation?
Well, to me, the average is almost the same as the mean, but.
Yeah,
it's
but
the
why don't
same.
you say from finished grade?
The average elevation would be calculated the same way you would calculate the mean original grade, which is you pick points along a grade and then find the average.
But if you're on a slope, what you'd want to do, it seems to me, is not have it exceed 12 feet at any point, right? It wouldn't say, well, some of it's 15 because the average is here. Wouldn't you want to just say all the way along, it's got to be no more than 12 feet. So the panels have got to step down too with the change in the grade and slope. And just have it, look, I think is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see why you have to figure the average grade, average elevation it should just be, is that typical 12 feet? Is that a typical height of a freestanding panel? Ground mounted?
That's every ordinance I have seen says something about 12 feet, or then it sometimes adds that 22 feet
Because some
provision.
of them are on posts,
Yeah.
and then they flatten and they're more square than they are rectangular.
Yeah. Well, we are shooting in the dark with that for sure. 22 feet, it's the size of a single story house and its roof. I mean, that just seems so much.
Yeah, I agree.
And I just can't even see it in my mind's eye as a next door neighbor.
It's low.
I think 12 feet is low.
So pick a number.
I'd say probably 20.
20 is huge, though, but you might as well do 22 then.
Well, you got long lean ones that stand out that I've seen. They're pretty tall.
But you've got next door neighbors. I mean, it's one thing to be in an industrial area or something like that doing these things, but if you're talking about backyard.
Yeah, but you're
solar
saying
systems-
also they need to be screened.
Yeah, we are saying that too. I mean, as long as you're not gonna screen the south side. I mean,
But whatever the side is that needs the sun, obviously you're not gonna screen, and people aren't gonna wanna do that, because the whole purpose is to get the sun.
yeah, so they're not gonna be screening on the south side, but the other sides, the back sides of those things. Probably should be screened.
Just 12 seems slow. It is. Plus, there's one on Ripples that I was trying to think how high it was, because it was up a ways off the ground and then it laid like that. But
I mean, there must be a
square.
standard, they also have it up off the ground for snow.
The what?
The snow must be a factor in terms of the height of the pedestal or whatever it's still.
Oh, like I said, I just got one that's just over 5.5 feet from the ground.
Right, you mean it starts at 5.5 feet?
No.
Or the total?
Please. Yeah, because they're at an angle.
Yeah.
They're like this.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the ones that I'm used to.
But the one
seeing.
I'm talking about, long, skinny,
I know,
that I,
and maybe we don't want those when you have next door neighbors. I mean, I just think those are,
I think you see there, how tall are yours?
Those are pretty tall. This is
Yeah.
a ladder.
And yours are the long, right?
They might be.
They might be.
They might be.
yeah, the grandfather.
Well, I'm just trying to think, because they are,
Ours are big.
12's not
Ours
very,
are big.
because they're like sometimes stacked. on
Yeah,
top.
and ours are always at an angle.
Yeah.
Ours, no, that's right. They're
No,
always-
I just think.
They don't
12
adjust.
12's
No, they don't not
low.
adjust.
That's all. So 12's common though, but.
And they are our screening from our neighbors.
Oh, they are your screen.
They are our screening.
What about like 3 more feet, 15?
That's where I'd go.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that.
Let's cut it, let's go half.
And then
I
someone
know.
can come in and ask for variance, right?
Well, no,
I think you can get a variance for any of this.
height is the height.
We can always change it, right?
Yes.
We could always, if I see these coming in, I suppose, yeah, we could have them short. Sure.
I would be comfortable with 15.
Yeah.
But I would be hesitant to say you should populate the town with stuff higher than that, without any sort of. Without any sort of standards, well, we do have standards, but. Let's try 15.
Okay, so it's gonna be ground-mounted solar energy systems shall not exceed 15 feet in height. This is all ground-mounted solar energy systems.
Yes.
Shall not exceed 15 feet in height when oriented at maximum tilt as measured. And then Kim, were you suggesting that we delete the average elevation or just say when vertically from the finished grade?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So the finish, you don't mind like if they're gonna bring in a bunch of fill to raise the finished grade or whatever, it doesn't matter all that much.
well, I mean, I just, like you say, I don't,
I mean, the problem with that is that you could get somebody like berming these things up and then you defeated the purpose of the height restriction. Right?
I mean, easily go back to we measure height by the vertical distance between the mean original grade and the
be
downhill side.
consistent with how you calculate height, that's what you're gonna do. Do the mean original grade at the downhill side of the,
Right, that's how you calculate height of a structure.
yeah, exactly, these are structures. So I do the same definition that's under height in the ordinance.
Okay, that makes sense. We're gonna give them 3
I mean,
feet.
go on average, elevation to mean original to finished grade, let's be consistent throughout.
Yeah.
Just makes it easier.
Then they're gonna meet all the.
Then it's gonna read, ground-mounted solar energy system shall not exceed 15 feet in height when oriented at maximum tilt, period. And then height is the vertical distance between, something like that.
The mean original grade at the downhill side, put prior construction too.
Yeah, it's in there, mean original grade prior to construction.
Oh, I didn't say.
My eyes are so bad right now, I have a hard time reading this.
Glasses.
So it's gonna read, ground-mounted solar energy system shall not exceed 15 feet in height when oriented at maximum tilt as measured from the vertical distance between the mean original grade prior to construction at the downhill side of the structure and the highest point of the structure.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. And
Yes.
then in doing that, the other thing that I changed was this exemption up here because we didn't give the 30-foot. And then it really should say all solar energy systems shall meet applicable setback requirements for the district they are located in.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so then I'm going to delete this. Whoops. Great. All right. Moving on, under this one, these are standards for roof-mounted and small-scale ground-mounted solar energy systems. I think I might have added roof-mounted. Small-scale roof-mounted solar energy systems are permitted without permits in all districts, as we've talked about. And then small-scale ground-mounted solar energy systems and medium-scale roof-mounted solar energy systems require building permit from the code enforcement officer. So I just added that. Under this one, Kim, this was where like Andy and you and I were having this conversation and Andy wanted to add like this sentence at the beginning about when we were talking about originally the draft had something about only requiring ground-mounted solar energy systems to be only located on the sides of structures and not in the front yard of a structure. And then we're getting into like this discussion about like, well, you don't have a definition of what a front yard is. So the only thing that we can, like technically in the ordinance, your front yard is the way that you get into your property through a driveway, which kind of defeats if your driveway is like Gail's house, her driveway's behind the main road. So kind of defeats the purpose. So we I didn't like the way that this was written and then really went back to the goal, which was to require reasonable visual impact, reasonable ways to like mitigate visual impacts. So this is what I came up with. All small-scale ground-mounted solar energy systems shall comply with all setback requirements. When installing small-scale ground-mounted solar energy systems, reasonable efforts shall be made to minimize undue visual impacts by preserving native vegetation, screening abutting properties, or other appropriate measures, including adherence to height standards and setback requirements. It's a little redundant. I think I can delete this.
Yeah, the adherence to.
Thoughts?
I think we've got to afford people some relief from the appearance of these things.
When I read that and it says that I have,
Right.
that's okay, it says screening abutting properties. I know what we're trying to say, but it sounds like I'm screening their property rather than screening my property from them, protecting their view rather than, I'm trying to be a nice neighbor, so I'm gonna screen my property. But it looks to me
Yes,
like,
yes,
but it looks
yes.
to me like I have to screen their property. Screening abutting properties. Just reads upside down to me.
Should say vegetate screening, from abutting properties.
Yeah,
So that you know it's you.
Right,
From
it's me
them.
that has to
Yeah,
do it, it's
me,
not,
yeah, from them,
right,
that I'm the one that's putting these
screening,
in, so I need to make all efforts to make sure I'm protecting my neighbors.
How about we
And
just
it
say,
has to be, I'm sorry, by saying it has to be reasonable, we're doing away with the idea that you're gonna put tall trees in front of the south side of your panels. Right.
we could also say, reasonable efforts shall be made to minimize undue visual impacts by preserving native vegetation, screening, fencing, or other appropriate measures, including.
Yes, yes.
thank you.
Should there be a comma after that or after fencing?
No.
Where is Ann Thunderberg when we need her?
I think I looked that up the other day, and I think both are right, but depends on your writing style. Anyway, so I'm going to delete all small-scale ground-mounted solar energy systems shall comply with setback requirements because we already said it.
Yes,
Okay. So does that work?
yes,
Yes.
thank you.
All right. This one, I think I added all, so while solar panels are designed to absorb sunlight and not reflect sunlight, placement of all roof-mounted and small-scale ground-mounted solar energy systems should be designed to negate any glare. So that was just to clarify, we're talking about all of them, medium and small. The next one was standards for medium scale, and then I just added to be clear that we're talking about ground-mounted solar energy systems in this section.
Right.
So this would be where the things go to planning board. Then I added another submission requirement to require a decommissioning and site reclamation plan.
And that's for them.
Can request it. This would be for the conditional use approval submissions.
Yep.
I'll keep going unless you tell me to stop.
Yeah. No, keep going.
Visual impact, this is a standard, so reasonable efforts as determined by the planning board shall be made to minimize undue visual impacts by preserving native vegetation screening. I gotta change that too.
Screening and fencing.
Fencing or other appropriate measures, including adherence to height standards and setback requirements. So this would be, again, for medium scale systems. So now we're getting into removal. So in the original version, there was like a removal section and an abandonment section. And so to me, they all kind of blended together. So I just created section 5. I just combined the two, Gail, or for
Yes.
really. And then the first one is thinking about specifying that we're really, when we're talking about removal, we're talking about all ground-mounted solar energy systems, but not the roof-mounted ones.
Right.
And that's kind of a distinction, policy distinction, just to be clear.
Yep.
Make sure that's okay with everybody.
Why aren't we talking about the roof mounted ones?
What
Why-
is, question is, what is our purpose? And the purpose is to avoid the landscape being littered with defunct structures as opposed to something that's just
On your roof.
on your roof. I mean, I can envision people saying, I'm gonna probably have to redo that roof in 3 years.
Right.
So we want to avoid making people
Mhm.
do that without, I mean, if there's some environmental reason to do it, which I haven't heard, then we might want to have it removed, make them remove it too, but it's really the visual impact of those defunct, somewhat industrial looking structures.
Mhm.
And it might be, yeah, I guess it should be, yes, that's why the or is in there. Okay, does that make sense, or do you want to talk about it some more?
You all set with that?
Mhm.
I think we're all set. And then there are-
And then the next one is removal of the medium scale ground mounted solar energy systems have since they're bigger, they have a different set of removal criteria. And then essentially I just combined the abandonment because it really was always talking about medium scale, that might not be right. So it always said absent notice of a proposed date of decommissioning or written notice of extenuating circumstances, a medium scale ground mounted solar energy system shall be considered abandoned when it fails to operate for more than 1 year. I didn't change that. I just
Make
took
that-
two paragraphs and made them into one paragraph.
You saying we want to leave that for just the medium?
It's really a question. Do we just want to leave that only for the medium, or?
Well, how do we enforce the removal of the small scale systems if we say you've got to remove it, but
I don't think you can. How do you know that there's no proposed decommissioning or written notice of extenuating circumstances for a small scale ground mounted system because it doesn't go to planning board?
so what's the leverage to get the small ones removed?
I don't know. We're not asking for a decommissioning plan for small scale systems. They're just a permit from the code office.
So,
Do we just get rid of the word medium scale and just use? Because it's important that small scale and medium scale be decommissioned the same. I mean, I don't think when you're taking them apart, I think it doesn't matter if it was a small or a medium.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, any ground mounted system that's been abandoned or no longer used has to be
Yeah.
removed somehow.
I don't think it matters what size it is.
I mean, let's remember that a small scale system can be up to 1/3 of an acre,
True.
and that's a lot.
Right,
Yes.
So,
so I don't think it matters. If it's small or medium, abandoned is abandoned, and taking care of it properly is what we need to have done.
right,
Right.
So basically delete these two.
Just. Yes, get rid of the word medium.
And that, because we don't allow that.
Well, that takes you back up to removal of medium scale ground mounted solar systems where you notify this code officer by certified mail. Cause that was under medium and so was the abandonment one.
right.
Say the same thing, that removal of
Ground mounted.
all ground mounted solar energy systems.
Right, get rid of the word medium again, you
Yeah.
think?
Yep.
So you want like anybody who has a ground-mounted solar energy system to notify by certified mail the code enforcement officer of the proposed date of discontinued operations?
Well, I
Because
mean, that's
these,
same as-
those systems are more for, like this language was really more for larger scale
no, I mean, I
that
mean,
are like
some,
connected to the grid, basically.
Yeah, but nobody's gonna put up just one panel.
yeah, they
But-
have.
Okay. I stand corrected.
That's okay.
I think it's, I
Yeah.
think it's okay.
I think it's okay, but I think you need to get, yes. Thank you.
You think it's okay to delete this?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, in order to do a ground mounted anything, you at least have to get a permit from the code enforcement officer. And
So-
then as part of that deal, you've got to come back and speak to the code enforcement officer when it's not working anymore and make plans to get rid of it.
Okay,
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
We're not over governing on that, are we?
I don't think so.
No. We'll get told if we are, but
I mean, the model ordinances that we've looked at, you know, the intent is to make the small scale stuff easy for people. And the medium and larger ones that are more commercialized and have to go through a harder review process.
well, they're still doing that. There's no question about that. It's just that our policy, what we're saying is that the policy should be, when you're done with the ground mounted system, you should make plans to remove it within the year and get it done within a year. When it's not functioning anymore.
Yep,
And because they don't score a lot of style points.
got it. I can make those changes, no problem.
Thank you.
So basically, we're not making any changes to the definition of height. So I'm just taking that out of our warrant article. And everything else is the same.
I'm not quite sure what you meant with that. We changed it to 15 feet. Is that something different you're talking about?
Nope, we're not in what we had done in the,
Sorry. Yeah, no, we haven't made any
Yep.
changes.
so that's coming out. That's not a proposed change. There's no change there. So I'll clean this up and send it back to everybody and send it to Claire.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
I sent her this one to put on the website, this revised one tonight.
Yeah, she
Just
sent me a question to ask what the yellow means and I'll,
So even on the same page.
Okay.
In case somebody was looking at
Thank you,
this,
Noel.
Thank you.
yep. Also, I wanted to mention to everybody that I have recently hired a new planner. And his name is Matt Williams, and he was the planner in the city of Ellsworth, but he has a law degree. And I think he'd be a good fit for some
yeah.
work. What was that?
So we won't hold it against him.
Yeah, I tried not to. But I think he'll be a good fit for some of the work that we're getting ready to do, particularly with subdivision rewrites and that kind of stuff. So I think he starts on March 3rd. And might be good for him to come to the next LUZO meeting. Say hi to everybody.
Great.
So
We
you
look forward to welcoming him. Thank you for
you
doing
see a
it.
new face, and I think it'll help us get through a bunch of stuff more efficiently too. So it'll be good.
Super. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Noel.
Have a good
Happy
birthday.
daughter.
See ya.
Bye-bye.